Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order for December 8, 2022, the regular business meeting for Hudsonville Public Schools. Thank you for being here this evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone. I'm not sure if you're here to listen to us or the folks behind us. Maybe I kind of suspect at least some folks the latter. We're all looking forward to that. So, all board members are present this evening. Thank you for that. We'll move on to a motion on the agenda. I need either a motion to approve or revise the agenda, please.
Move to approve.
Motion by Chad Tuttle to approve.
Second.
Support from Dawn Steeden. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. We move on next to board recognition. Dr. Vanderjack.
Thank you. I'm not going to steal all the thunder, but I'm going to ask Mary Dart to say a few words to introduce a very special employee that we have in our Hudsonville public school system. Quite often we have people that work behind the scenes to make our district a very special place for all of our students and does amazing work. So I'm not going to steal the thunder about Linda, but I'm going to ask Linda to stand up, stand next to Mary as she says some amazing words and go from there. So, start.
Thank you very much. So if you don't know me, my name is Mary Darton, and I'm the food service director for both Hudsonville and Jenison. But I have a very special person that I'd like to recognize today at the board meeting. And I'd like to introduce you to Linda Willemstein. She is, I'm not going to call her an unsung hero anymore because I'm going to sing about her today. Linda is our kitchen manager for Hudsonville and Jenison schools. And the title of that job doesn't really tell you what she does. She is the person behind the scenes who makes sure that every piece of food gets to where it's supposed to go that's on the menu. I mean, that doesn't even talk about what she is. Every meal we serve in both school districts, and last year, let me tell you, it was 1.4 million meals. Every meal that we serve goes through these hands, and this heart, and this head. Linda's a person that you work with every day, and her head she keeps her head on straight. She's cool in a crisis. She's a fantastic coworker. She's a great friend. She's the type of person when you start to talk about an issue or a problem to be solved, you can see the wheels turning in her brain before you finish sentences. She figures out the ways to do things. She figures out the simplest way to do things. She often has to remind me that I make things too complicated. But her head is always at work figuring things out. What's the best way to do something? The most efficient way to do something? The smartest way to do something? The least expensive way to do something? She cuts to the core. She has a real talent for that. Her hands, I will tell you, she's done numerous jobs over her 15 plus years in our department. But what her hands do now is literally every single meal, every single meal, every single recipe. Every single driver that takes food out, every box, every can, she knows where it's coming from, where it's going, who's supposed to get it, and it's amazing the knowledge that she has and what her hands do. But really Linda's biggest strength is her heart. Her heart leads what she does. She is a true servant leader in our department. She serves with her whole heart. She thinks about the smallest to the tallest, the youngest to the oldest. Every kid in our district is her kid, and she gives every one of them the same thought and care that she does for her coworkers. So the reason I say that is because Linda was honored in November as the School Nutrition Association's Manager of the Year. And what that means is across the state of Michigan, we nominated Linda for this award because of what she does, her everyday selflessness, but also going above and beyond the call of duty in the last 2 years. She was honored at our banquet in front of hundreds of school nutrition professionals across the state of Michigan. She received a beautiful award, and her wonderful husband Bill is with her today, who is her support and the wind beneath her wings. And truly a special person and an asset to what we do in food service. So I'd like to thank Linda for being amazing and for being recognized across the state of Michigan as Manager of the Year in School Nutrition.
Thank you, Mary. I know, Linda, you really want to say a few words, but I know you don't really want to hear it. Could we get a quick picture with you, just because we want to appreciate you, not just here, but
Where would you like her to go?
we'll come right down there.
Okay.
we talk about academics and we talk about the arts and sports, and there are some things that we just assume are going to happen every single day. Day in and day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. And we assume, one of those things we assume is that children will be fed within Hudsonville and Jenison, and it'll be good food, and those that need special help will get that special help. And we assume that, and we take it for granted. You know, I know I do. I know it's just easy to do, right? Because it just works, and it works like clockwork. And it's that way because of people who care and who make the effort and do the things that you do, Linda. So congratulations again, and thank you so, so much. Okay, next we move on to Student Council report, and I think Riella is here. There she is.
Okay, sorry about that. Hello, for those who don't know, my name is Briella, and I'm Student Council's Public Relations Officer. So a big piece of news that I have right now is that there is probably going to be a winter dance, which is very exciting because we haven't had one in a few years.
We're looking at Mr. Beal behind you.
Yeah, very exciting. And the date we're thinking of doing it on is February 17th, which is the Friday of Valentine's Day week. And that is all I know of about the dance as of now. So hopefully I can update you next time. And moving on, Student Council donated $500 to the Eagles Landing Family in Need fundraiser. And this past Tuesday, we held a movie night at the high school, which was open to all ages. And the admission fee was to bring a gift. And all the gifts that we collected, we are donating to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. Next week is the last week before Christmas break, which I'm very excited about. And we plan out Spirit Days, so I thought I'd share a few with you. One of the Spirit Days is Adam Sandler Day. And another is Zoom Meeting Day, which is where you wear a fancy shirt and not really fancy pants. Yeah, and then lastly, I'd like to take the time to mention the unfortunate passing of Luke Ballstead. I know that he was incredibly bright and thoughtful, and he did many incredible things, not just for Student Council, but for everyone around him. In his honor, we're planning on donating to the National Alliance for Mental Illness of Grand Rapids, and also donating a picnic table in his honor made out of recycled materials to be placed somewhere outdoors in the high school, because he was very big on supporting environmental causes. Thank you for taking the time to listen to what Student Council is doing. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you for the update, and thank you for taking a moment to recognize Luke. We did as a board as well, and I love the idea of the picnic table and things that were important to him. He was a special young man as well, and we'll miss him. So thank you. Is there a date for the winter dance yet? February 17th. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just seeing how far along things are. I'm trying to help you out here a little bit.
I feel like last month you said we have a dance. This month you said we probably have a dance. So I'm looking forward to next month.
Yeah.
We're working on some chaperones.
He's going to sign us up. So,
Yeah.
anything else from the board for Briella? Thank you. Great update. We appreciate it. Okay, next up we have teaching and learning feature, and obviously we all can see what that is, so we're going to part the waters here and move the tables to the side so the audience can enjoy as well, and then we'll come back together and then we'll have public comment. So bear with us for a moment.
this coming Sunday, we have the orchestra concerts that are going to be taking place. 3 of them on Sunday, one at 2 o'clock for Baldwin, 3:30 for Riley, and then 5 o'clock for these students, plus the other orchestras that we have at the high school. Monday night is the choir concert. Wednesday night then is the band concert, I believe, if I remember right, Mr. Blair? Yep. And then I think that will be the culmination of all the holiday concerts that we have for this year. It's been a busy season for these folks. Just today, some of these students went over to the ECC and performed for those students. And we have 5 performances in the next 4 days. So they're a little busy right now, but it is the season. So this next work is a culmination of a bunch of old English carols, and it's called a Christmas triptych.
Before you guys all scoot out, while tables are getting repositioned, thank you. I mean, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. It is great to see. I can remember when the orchestra program started, and the growth and the number of students and the development, it's been remarkable. So thank you for taking time out of your really busy schedules. I know a lot going on this time of year, including performances, and we really appreciate you being here, the work you've all put in. Sounded great. Have a great Christmas season, all of you. Thank you again. Okay, everybody back and settled in? And that was wonderful, wonderful. Okay, at this time, we will have comments, public comment. Robin will announce the name. Please approach the podium. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes and be addressed about board policy and topics on board business. So Robin will call your name, and then please come on up and we'll hear comments at this time.
Mindy Vandenheuvel.
Good evening. I would like to start off by thanking you as a board for not voting on the ruler curriculum tonight. I think it was great at the work session that we brought up some figures and looked at things, and Barb asked me a couple of questions, which I too thought were kind of interesting to know the survey results from August to November had such a swing, and to question that. I'm thankful that you guys decided to go the entire 2 years through the quote-unquote pilot before voting on it. A couple other things. I have a child in 5th year Chinese. He was upset that he couldn't use it as an AP credit. Other languages get to use that, and Chinese is especially hard, and he was upset that he wasn't able to do that, just to put it on your radar. Also, my other child was walking down the hallway a couple of weeks ago, was accidentally bumped from behind, which then pushed them into the child in front of them, who then turned around and called my child a cracker. I thought that was weird to hear that in Hudsonville, but after talking to other students, I hear that racial slurs are commonplace in our school system, and I think our district has an issue with discipline. We walk in and we see the little stickers that say no vaping, smoke free. That's a load. I mean, kids vape all the time. Kids vape in bathrooms, they vape in corners. There's zero discipline. We need to get back to discipline. We need to stop walking on eggshells and worrying about what people think. We need to stick to the rules. We need to stick to what Hudsonville started as and go back to it, because clearly we've gone down a slippery slope and we're near the bottom. We need to return. We have so many things that we need to work on. I'm thankful that we have new board members coming in, and we can hopefully get some change working, especially with the books in the classroom. I feel like I've spoken about this before a year ago when my daughter came home with horrible books due to school choice and book clubs. A good thing to refer to, which I spoke about back then, was the student handbook. You're not allowed to cuss. So therefore, there should be 0 books with F-bombs, with B words. I know there are some smaller ears here tonight. So none of this should be allowed in our books. It should be fairly easy. I know Chad Tuttle talked about before there's not an SOP for it. You can revert back to that. Use that as your starting SOP, your standing operating procedure. These books should not be in classrooms. It's not about opinion. Our education system should be neutral, and it should be a base for our children. If you want to teach your child something else, that's totally fine. If teachers want to engage in something else outside of school, that's fine. But we're here in school and we need to return back. The last thing I want to say is social emotional learning is a train wreck. Children should not be taught that emotions are the basis of everything. That doesn't go well. You don't appreciate it when people come up here spouting with emotion versus logic.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Robin.
Keith Lyon-Decker.
There's been a lot of talk in this room about supporting all students. I think everyone agrees that that is an important goal. But I think some context is needed to understand what it truly means to support students. Let's take the example of Jimmy. He's a typical West Michigan kid. He goes to grandma's house in Kansas for Christmas. In December, when the corn is harvested, Kansas looks pretty darn flat. And in the summertime, Jimmy goes to the top of the dune at Tuttle Park. From that dune, he can see the horizon as a flat line all the way around him. And so, Jimmy goes to school one day, and he gets confused when the teacher tells him that the Earth is a large sphere spinning in space. He tells the teacher, "The Earth is not round, it is flat. That is my lived experience. I know it to be true because that is how I perceive the world and how I truly feel. Who are you to tell me that my lived experience is not true and accurate?" What does truly supporting this student look like? Should the teacher say, "I'm sorry for projecting my spherical normative worldview onto you. Of course, the world can be flat for you if that is how you experience it. We should start a student chapter of the Flat Earth Society and celebrate the different ways we all experience the world." Does that truly help that student? No, of course not. Can we be loving, caring, and supporting to kids without sacrificing the truth of reality? Of course we can. And our kids deserve nothing less, especially from educators. Adolescence is hard because it is the process through which we have to come to terms with the totality of real life. We do students no favors by pretending that reality is malleable depending upon one's own feelings. It is not hateful to hold out reality to students. It does not deny anyone's existence. It is just caring enough to be truthful. Whether it is the shape of the earth or gender dysphoria, coming to grips with reality is not always easy, and it often weighs on students' mental health. Students absolutely need mental health resources when they struggle. The shooting at a gay nightclub in Colorado was referenced at the work session meeting as an incident we should learn from. It seems like a stretch to take lessons from an event so far removed from HPS, but if we are to take a lesson, we should realize that a common denominator with many mass shootings is mental health. The shooter self-identified as non-binary and asked for his pronouns to be they, them. Certainly, I think when a singular person starts referring to themselves in a plural form, mental health professionals should likely be involved at some level. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Robin.
Thomas Kapenga.
First, I want to say, Chad, thank you for your service. Very much appreciated. Dad, thank you. It doesn't seem to suffice in moments like these. 14 years on the board, I think? 15? Okay. Couldn't remember how many times I had to vote for you, so. But that's overshadowed by 36 years of teaching, including many years of serving as the Teachers Union president. You also spent an extraordinary amount of sports seasons serving as a coach, encompassing basketball and softball, along with cross country and track. And I have to say, who in their right mind would put you in charge of cross country and track? I'm grateful for having the opportunity to work with you for 4.5 years before you retired at Park. Those were difficult years for me. As I just figured out what to do and how to work and run a, maintain a building, and it was challenging, and you were a valuable resource there to have. I do want to thank you for being my 6th grade teacher. Despite all the laps you made me run and the tedious hours of having to copy textbooks because of some tiny infractions that I most likely was not even guilty of. I'm certain that my sister, when she had you, was never found guilty of any classroom violations, but that's a topic for another day. I want to thank you for instilling a competitive spirit within me as you have done for so many Hudsonville students. I want to thank you for showing me how to be willing to admit failures. I want to thank you for demonstrating service through your work. The staff at Park Elementary would not like to thank you for instilling your wit and dry humor in me as they are constantly subjected to it. You have left your mark at Park for sure, and I mean literally. We still have the swirl in the floor of your last classroom where your teacher chair sat in your never-changing classroom setup. And now Mr. Bullheis feels obligated to keep his chair there. Over the course of the next few years, Park will be undergoing a renovation that will include tearing down your first classroom where Tracy and I had you for a teacher. And while I'm excited for the benefit that will be provided to the kids at our school, part of me will be sad when it goes. Ironically, Tricia, my wife, gets to work in that very room now, which is special to me. And I will whistle zippity-doo-dah in the room before it goes down just for you. And I know the last couple of years have been challenging on many fronts. For you, being on the board, health and all that. But I'm grateful for the class and grace you showed through all the adversity. I want to thank the administration for their support and of him and his time and service. And Dad, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Tom, for those really touching words. That was very special. Obviously, we'll say a few words later in the meeting, but thank you for that. And, yeah, okay, next up, Robin.
Aaron Doobie.
Man, I really didn't want to follow that. I want to tell you a little about a mental exercise you can use that helps spotting bias. I've always called it substitution. I don't remember if that's the right term. I learned about it a long time ago, so just don't ask the teacher that taught me that and we'll be fine. Allow me to demonstrate. It's really easy. You just substitute the subject of one thing for another to see if it changes how you feel. I will use it with comments that have been made about SEL for you. I don't want my children to learn about the elderly or to stand up for them. I think people with disabilities are unnatural, and I don't want my children to be a part of their normalization. I have nothing against black students. I just think having content that acknowledges they exist is indoctrination. SEL is teaching values, and values should be taught at home, and in my home, we don't value equality for women. Now, people are free to subscribe to all of those comments. They're even free to opt their children out of lessons that go against that. That's parental rights. But when you use that as a basis for policy descriptions, it becomes discrimination. It doesn't matter what protected group you're substitute in, it is discrimination. So please, stop giving room and support to discrimination. Pass ruler and SEL, and let's move on. Our kids need that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Robin.
Jessica DeYoung.
Good evening. First, I would like to thank both Larry and Chad for their years of service on the board. You are both very appreciated and will be greatly missed. Second, I have a few questions regarding curriculum and the way teachers are educating our students. Why do our kids need to read at home for at least 20 minutes each day? They read at school already. Why do they need to read at home? Or what about the multiplication tables and count by songs that I am hearing almost nonstop from my third grader? And why Have my kids been singing the same songs for their holiday program for the past 2 months? One word, repetition. Repetition is incredibly important for teaching new skills, concepts, and ideas that students need to retain. It's crucial for students to practice reading, math, music, etc. for retention. Research shows that by repeating things in a variety of ways, auditory, visual, hands-on, students show better recallability, which helps them put these skills and knowledge into practice. On Tuesday, my 3rd grader came home from school and told me he had cried that day. I asked if something had happened, and he shared with me that when his class walked from Jamestown Upper to shop at the Santa sale set up at Lower, upon entering the building, his eyes welled up with tears and he started to cry. Being there reminded him of good memories he had made with his teachers and friends while in pre-K through 2nd grade. He went into a bathroom to regain composure. A few other boys went with him, not to laugh at him or tease him for crying, but instead who talked with him and helped him feel better. They showed him empathy, understanding, care. Those 3rd grade boys put into practice skills they had learned through our SEL ruler curriculum. There are those who don't see the value in SEL or don't feel it's working or necessary. I am here to tell you it is working. Kids are learning important social-emotional skills. They are putting them into practice. One argument I've heard is that some students need SEL and some don't. As a licensed social worker who has studied mental health, I disagree. For some students like mine who are taught at home or church or by their coaches about empathy, respect, being a good team player, etc., the repetition received at school helps to solidify these values and concepts so our students can better put them into practice. And for those who aren't taught these values outside of school, where else do you expect them to learn it? Is Ruler the best curriculum for our students? I don't know. I don't have data to answer that question. I do strongly urge you, the board, to fully complete the 2-year pilot of Ruler, collect, analyze, and evaluate the data, and make an educated, data-driven decision regarding the curriculum at that point. Finally, I want to thank our teachers and administrators for their hard work the first half of this academic year. I may not have been elected to serve on the board, but I will continue to support and advocate for you and all students. I hope each of you has a relaxing and joy-filled holiday break. You deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up.
Randy Beist.
I wish I wasn't here every month. Things that need to be said. The board code of conduct reads, I will fairly and equally represent all students under the care of Hudsonville Public Schools, recognizing the number one concern is the educational welfare of all students. Why then has at least one of our board members been part of a private Facebook group that has promoted so many things about the district that are factually dishonest and seriously harmful? It was members of this Facebook group who last April and May created a false narrative about the financial picture of our district in regard to the important bond renewal. Then, when the advocacy of that group took root and the renewal came close, several of you pointed to the numbers as if our district is struggling. Yet, the recent audit gave glowing reviews. We know that at least one of you fed false information to these people. One of you was seen before and after board meetings. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Quietly talking to this group of people. Ironic that they like to talk about themselves as honest and transparent as they promoted themselves, and yet it was anything but. Within this group, serious bullying of our children has taken place. It's private. Perhaps not everyone is aware, but bullying and endangering of our children is a violation of our national and our state laws. Each of you is sworn to uphold the Constitution of our nation. You are sworn state officials in your position as board members. As a result of your direct and indirect involvement with that group, you have failed your duties to represent all of our students. Because of your participation, some of our students and families are less safe, and that's not an opinion. If a couple of you are part of any other board in this community, you would be asked for your resignation. If any of our administrators or teachers had been part of that group, you would be asking for their resignations. Chad and Larry. Our appreciation is beyond words. Both of you have served with wisdom, with commendable intellect, and always with deep integrity. I'm thankful for a few conversations I had between these board meetings and to your cards in the past 16, 18 months. Larry, your commitment to HPS, teaching here and serving on our board, all those coaching years, you belong in the Hudsonville Hall of Fame. Chad, your commitment to HPS and to the greater West Michigan community is commendable and deeply needed. Again, from so many of us in this room and beyond, from the many parents who couldn't be here, thank you
for your comments. Next one.
Jenna Braun.
Good evening. Before I get to the point of my statement, I would love to dive into a little backstory. Many of you don't know this about my family, but while my ex-husband was active duty in the U.S. Army, we lived in South Korea on a very remote base in the middle of the country. At that time, my oldest son was 4 years old and had just started learning to identify familiar English words. It was so reassuring to him when we would go off base and he would hear or see words in English and able to recognize symbols that reminded him of home. As often as I could, and mostly when I felt homesick, I would go to the local Starbucks for a taste of comfort and familiarity. It didn't matter that this store was thousands of miles away from my home. Walking into somewhere that looked and tasted like my memories was what I needed. I imagine that others that have traveled or lived overseas have felt similarly. Experiencing local food and customs is fantastic and exciting, but sometimes everyone needs a little reassurance that something is safe and familiar. Now to my point. At Hudsonville High School, we have a hallway that leads to the gyms where bricks have been painted by students. This has been here as long as I can remember, and I remember walking through the corridor, taking notice of the different pictures or words that students have painted on these bricks. A couple of months ago, as we were walking to basketball practice, I saw a brick painted to represent the trans flag. I showed it to my children. I wish that I could have recorded the joy and excitement and cheer of "let's go" while pumping their fists into the air while they saw it. In that moment, my child felt seen and heard and safe and comforted for exactly who they are. It reassured my child that they are not alone in this community. Something as simple as that symbol painted on a brick by another student in a hallway of this high school brought comfort and safety and love to my child. On November 30th, the Department of Homeland Security issued a National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin regarding the heightened threat of domestic terrorism within the United States. To quote this bulletin, targets of potential violence, including public gatherings, faith-based institutions, the LGBTQIA+ community, schools, and racial and religious minorities are all targets. As a parent of someone that is in this targeted group, we are living in terrifying times. Now, I have been reassured multiple times that all board members are supporting of all students. So if that is true, then I suggest we get more visibility, more transparency to support all of those students. A trans brick is a great place to start, but it is not the end of the visibility that we require to support all students at Hudsonville Public Schools.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Robin.
Emily Brechting.
Good evening. My name is Emily Brechting, and I have 3 high schoolers and 1 elementary student in the district. They're here with me tonight. I'd like to begin by addressing Chad Tuttle. Thank you. This job was never an easy one, but it certainly looked a bit different several years ago when you agreed to this job. Thank you for helping HPS navigate the pandemic and overseeing significant district growth and development. Your tenure has included numerous challenges beyond these, and you displayed extraordinary leadership by being open-minded, level-headed, and thoughtful. Through it all, you maintained your focus on the well-being of our students. Thank you for serving our community in this way. This board and our community are better because you did. I'd like to use my remaining time to address the continued discord about social emotional learning. Before I continue, I'd like to share that I hold a doctorate in clinical psychology, as I believe it's relevant to the current conversation. At the most recent work session, data was presented indicating that 93% of our teachers voted in support of continuing with the ruler curriculum. These are educators who we recruited and hired based on their education, training, and expertise. This very board voted on the hiring of several of these teachers. Let's trust that training and expertise that we so value during the hiring process and listen to our educators. Continuing to drag your feet and ignoring the data is not productive. It hinders our staff from doing good and necessary work and keeps resources from our students. Why does this matter so much? Current numbers from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, indicate that 1 in 5 young people report that the pandemic had significant negative impact on their mental health. These include increased anxiety, depression, isolation, higher rates of alcohol and drug use to deal with stress. So many kids are struggling. I have more detailed data if you want to meet with me after the meeting. Now, I am not suggesting that SEL curriculum is going to address all of those concerns. However, I do believe that SEL represents an important component of the education and care advocated by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychological Association, and NAMI. We need more support for our students, not less. Finally, SEL is not for a select group of students, as suggested by some members of this board during the recent work session. Learning these skills makes us all better humans and better neighbors to each other. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any others, Robin? All right, thank you all for your comments. We do appreciate hearing from parents in the community. That is important to us, so thank you. Okay, we move on now to action items. First up is consent agenda. Can I have a motion and a second, please, to approve items in the consent agenda? Motion by Bauer Cooper, support from Larry Kapenga. Any questions or comments on items in the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We move on to regular action agenda. First up, we have school resource officer proposal. Are we taking this one down here?
So we reviewed this in the work session last week, 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, Monday. And there have been no recommendations. Our recommendation is for the approval of an additional resource officer to be housed on the Baldwin campus to work with Ottawa County and Georgetown Township to have that person serve in that capacity, not only on that campus, but to service the other Georgetown schools. That will increase our resource officers from one on this campus that services the city. We have support in Jamestown Township, and this will add support in Georgetown Township.
We did have a chance to review this in the last work session. So I'll have a motion and a second, please. A motion from Dawn Sneeden. Support from Chad Tuttle. Any questions or comments on this topic? Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve that the board approve, that the board approve the recommendation for an additional school resource officer as reviewed by Dr. Vanderjack, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next up, we have a course proposal. Ms. Taylor.
Good evening. This evening I am presenting for final recommendation of approval of the World at War course, which we've had the opportunity to discuss at both a work session and then as well as first reading in November.
Okay, can I have a motion that the board approve the second and final reading of the World at War, World War I, World War II course proposal as reviewed by Ms. Taylor? And we had a chance to take a look at this in work sessions. Motion? Motion by Dawn Sneeden. Support from Andrew DeWitt. Any questions or comments? And this will be for next fall.
Correct.
Okay. Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Bauer Elementary, Raleigh Street Middle School roof bid recommendation. Mr. Briggs.
Yes, the recommendation was covered in detail at the last board meeting. I really don't have anything new to add, other than just the continued thanks that the board and Dr. Vanderjack listened to staff and helped us bring in some different firms, particularly OAK for this bond. And it really helped, as I mentioned many times during the recommendation, it helped us a great deal to get a higher bid participation. So we are happy about the numbers we're bringing. It beat our pre-bid estimate, and our recommendation, we believe, is going to provide for another successful project. So that's all I have.
You were kind of hoping you were going to come with some lower numbers today.
Maybe
I'm just
next
giving
time.
you a hard time.
Maybe next time. Maybe. That's an idea.
Okay, can I have a motion, please, that the board approve the roof bid recommendations for Bauer and Riley as presented and reviewed by Mr. Briggs? Motion by Chad Tuttle.
Support.
Support from Bauer Cooper. Any questions or comments on this? All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next up, we have summer tax resolution. Mr. Briggs, you're taking this?
Thank you, yes. So this is I would say, annual resolution, but we do it annually to allow us to collect a summer tax versus a winter-only tax. And with our system, we do ask the voters, or the taxpayers, to pay once a year versus twice a year. It helps our cash flow, and it also cleans up the process of splitting the bill between the summer and winter levy. So our recommendation is that we continue to adopt this resolution, and we ask the taxing units to collect our taxes once in the summer of 2023. Pardon me?
Sorry, go ahead.
Just the summer collection or no winter collection?
Just so there'll be only a summer collection in 2023.
Okay, can I have a motion that the board approve the summer tax resolution as reviewed by Mr. Briggs? Motion by Larry Kapenga. Support from Andrew DeWitt. Questions or comments on this? We were hemming and hawing up here a little bit because we were on a twice year for a little while, weren't we?
Yeah, I think it was probably up through 2013.
Okay.
But ever since I've been here in the fall of 2015, we've done one collection, we've done the summer only.
Okay. So we were on one, and then we went to double for cash flow reasons, and now
Yes.
we're going back to one.
We're not back to, we've been 100% summer levy for at least 8 years.
Okay. Okay, I got it. Okay, any other questions or comments on this? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next up, board policy. Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Next up, board policy updates and revisions, first reading.
Thank you. So we reviewed this in our last work section. If you have questions, please let me know. But these are the policies that we'd like to bring to the board. You may recall the first policy is about compensation, regarding board compensation. I'll let you discuss that if you want to. The next policy is one that did not exist. A reference was tied to a board administrative guideline that we really feel should be in there. That was, I think, maybe possibly overlooked in the past, but that is now in there. And then the rest of those are really changes to the law, with the exception of the weapons policy that we felt needed to be tidied up in the district. So we reviewed those in the work session. I didn't hear any questions since then, but if there are, please let me know. This is just a recommendation for a first reading, and then we'll come back in a month to the second reading and adoption.
Okay, can I have a motion that the board approve the policy updates and revisions as presented by Dr. Vanderjack and reviewed in the work session, please?
So moved.
Motion by Dawson Eden,
Support.
support from Bart Cooper. Any questions or comments on these policy revisions? Okay, we've had them second reading in January, right? And so we still have some time to propose any revisions if you'd so like. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Last action item we have is superintendent evaluation. So the board met in closed session a week ago Monday and reviewed a evaluation format and procedure that is put together by MASB, the Michigan Association of School Boards. And so it's a well-defined process and format and so forth. So we've used that for a number of years and continue to use that this year. There are 5 performance categories in this evaluation, and then there's a category on student growth and district goals, and then that's all rolled up into a final evaluation score. So I'm going to go ahead and read the performance in the 5, or the scores in the 5 performance categories. The scores I'm reading are all out of a total of 4. Okay, so under governance and board relations, the category rating was 3.5 out of 4. Under community relations, the category rating was 3.83 out of 4. Under staff relations, the score was 4 out of 4. Under business and finance, the score was 4 out of 4. And under instructional leadership, the score was 3.8 out of 4. Okay, if you sum up those categories, which is the first step, the score was 3.81, which is a 95% rating. And then we added on a student growth component. The student growth component was a 4 out of 4, and progress toward district goals, was also a 4 out of 4. So that's all gets summed up into a final rating. That final rating was 3.91 for a score of 98% or highly effective for the evaluation. So that is the outcome. We have some more work to do on goals for next year, but we'll be handling that in January. So with that, may I have a motion, please, to approve the superintendent evaluation as reviewed by myself? Motion by Andrew DeWitt. Support by Don Steeden. And we'll take a roll call vote on this. Andrew? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching me in that. Questions or comments? Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I had a nice early morning meeting down in Byron Center. And after the meeting, one of the young men came to me and said that he has students enrolled in Forest Grove School, and he's really pleased with the principal there, with the faculty there. He couldn't say enough good things about Forest Grove. And I said, well, that's a commonality for our district. We have very fine buildings, very fine principals, and I wanted to reinforce that we're a very fine school system. That being said, I had concerns with the appraisal form that we were using with MASB because we do, in spite of our high-quality district, we do have issues in our district, as all districts do. And my concern about the appraisal form system was that it's not actually addressed issues that we need to address in our district. So for that reason, I'm not able to support this performance form.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll do a roll call vote at this time. Mr. DeWitt?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
No. Okay. All right, the motion carries for approval of the evaluation. Again, we'll tackle goals as we get into January. Okay, that covers all the action items. We move on to discussion items. First up, we have district courses and curriculum approval. Again, not an action item, but a discussion item.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify this for the board and for anybody that was in the last work session. At the last work session, we brought together a list of courses that we'd like the board to approve because there have been some gaps in approvals that we had seen with courses. A board member had asked a question regarding the difference between courses and curriculum. I think it's a very valid question. And we dug a little deeper to realize that we might have to discuss the policy first before we discuss what the board would like to see from us. So because of that, tonight we are not asking for an action item regarding the course approvals. What we are asking for is allow us to revisit the policy. We've done a lot of work. Mrs. Taylor and myself have spent a lot of time not only with our policy, with the original framework that the board reviewed about 6 or 7 years ago, along with several neighboring districts, and what they're using the policy, and I can tell you they all look a little bit different, which can be a little bit somewhat confusing. So tonight we're not asking for an approval. We just want to be clear, the reason we're not asking for approval is because we feel like the policy needs to be cleaned up first. So we'll be bringing that back to the board in the work session in January, so we can have a deeper discussion on that. And then we will, after we have the policy, we know what the expectations are from the board, that will allow us to align what we can provide to the board and ask for approval at that point. So asking for approval now truly doesn't make sense because it might contradict the policy. We think the board needs to revisit the policy. So that is why it's not an action item today. It does not mean that we're going to stop teaching tomorrow because the courses are not approved. What it means is that the policy needs to be adjusted first, and then we'll bring back to the board what your expectations are so that we can make sure everything's approved and we can move forward. Primarily for a lot of our online classes that we might not have board approved at this point, we can then go back and we can make sure that what is approved is also what we are able to allow students to take in an online environment.
So we'll see a proposed policy, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we'll see a proposed policy revision in January for a first reading, February for a second reading, and then we'll act on these courses.
Yeah, full transparency, just to be very clear, we have a work session after the next board meeting, so we don't have another work session between board meetings. So at the next board meeting, we won't have anything on there. At the work session at the end of January, we'll have the policy discussion, then we'll bring it back in February for a first reading, hopefully get that the way the board would expect. We'll have a second reading in March, and then allow us then to then come back with what we feel the board should approve based on where there are gaps in approvals. Keep in mind, this has nothing to do with textbooks. That is required by the Michigan School Code to be board approved, and there's a separate policy regarding textbooks. This is simply the definition of courses. So we'll discuss that at the end of January, policy approval in February, March, and then we'll come back with where we find there are missing pieces to ask for board approval. And if there are courses that the board would like to dig deeper into from a discussion standpoint, that's when we would have those discussions go from there.
This is important cleanup that we need to do of these policies. So good. I'm glad we're taking those steps.
So,
Yeah.
in the meantime, can those online courses still be utilized?
Only ones that you've approved.
Okay.
Correct.
So for,
Right now, we're okay.
okay, that's my question.
We're, I don't know if you can hear me, we're more concerned about what the future could hold with the expansion of online courses, with online programs that might offer curriculum that the board would want to. I'll give you a perfect example, that if there is a course out there online that's available in a health curriculum, there is special language in not only board policy, but in our sex ed advisory that there is a reproductive unit that the board has to approve based on sex ed advisory board recommendations. That portion of the health course can only be taught here because that's what you have approved. If an online environment teaches a health course that has a reproductive unit that does not include what the board has approved, we can't approve that online course. Sorry, I know this is a lot, but that's why we want to slow down to make sure the policy covers it first, then we'll approve. But there still will be courses that we cannot approve with an online, what we call catalog, because it falls outside of the scope of what this board would approve for our school district.
Thank you. It's probably too early for this question, but I was overwhelmed when I looked at the list that we had to deal with. And I think it goes back maybe 30 to 40 years, some of them. And I just didn't want to be overwhelmed with having to approve a whole bunch of courses in one evening. So if you just kind of take that into consideration as you're thinking about policy and the way these courses are addressed to us.
I do believe once the policy is set, that list will look substantially different. Sure.
Ms. Tiller, did you want to add anything to this, or? No, you're good? Okay. Good. All right. Okay, any other questions or comments on this? So we have more work to do, and we'll be digesting this here through the early spring, it sounds like. So, okay. Next up, we have ruler curriculum discussion item. Mandy, okay. Ms. Thomas.
So following our conversation last week, I know that there were some questions during the meeting as well as some follow-up questions. And hopefully you've had a chance to receive and review the responses that we've shared around those questions. So for tonight's discussion, we just thought we would highlight some of the bigger pieces to those questions and concerns in attempts to make sure we just have shared understanding and knowledge around those pieces, as well as an opportunity to hear any additional questions you may have. So one of the questions or concerns were how or why were questions changed from last year's teacher perception survey between last year and this year. So teachers, in order to talk about that concept, I think it's important to talk about timelines. So teachers were surveyed in the fall and the winter of 2021 using the same survey on both occasions. This data was shared with the board in January, and comments during that board meeting in January indicated that the board wished to receive anecdotal data from teachers above and beyond the quantitative data that was shared. Therefore, an additional survey was shared in February, and that survey asked teachers to share what they saw as the benefits, the barriers of the curriculum, and it posed one multiple choice question that was regarding their preferences. If their preference was to see the district A continue using the ruler curriculum, B, go back to the selection process, or C, not adopt a district-wide curriculum for SEL. And in response to that, 65 teachers indicated that they wish to continue, 31 indicated that they wish to have the district go back to the selection process, and 19 indicated that they did not wish to see the district adopt a district-wide curriculum. However, when we looked at those 19 responses and the anecdotal information that was paired with that group that had selected C, there were those that did indicate that time was a primary reason for their selection. However, there were also several teachers in that same group who indicated that they had shared that option because they wished to continue using the same social-emotional teaching resources that they had previously in place of teaching a district-wide curriculum. And so with that information and feedback, we felt that it was important to go back to our original SOAR core goal of selecting and implementing a district-wide social-emotional learning curriculum, and ask that question this fall, slightly different and only involving the two options of A, do you wish to see the district continue using the ruler curriculum, or B, seeing the district return to the selection process. By reducing this question to only these two, the answer choices to only these two options, the board and the administration team are able to see the percentage of teachers that would wish to continue with the ruler curriculum. And that's holding the assumption that the district continues to have a desire to pursue a consistent district-wide curriculum for social-emotional learning. So as I shared in the last work session, 93.8% of teachers indicated that they prefer to see the district continue using ruler, and this equates to 122 teachers in support of continuing with ruler, and 8 teachers sharing the preference to convene a new selection process. As I mentioned last week, there were some small changes to the wording of questions between last year's survey and this year's, and I had shared the original survey questions with you. An example of this in last year's survey, a prompt was around the ease of the ruler implementation with a rating of 1 to 5, indicating easy to difficult. And this was changed to say the ruler resources are easy to access with ratings of 1 to 5, indicating strongly disagree to strongly agree. Something that was also changed was the way in which this data was analyzed. So I know that specifically in the January meeting, Dr. Huber, you had shared the suggestion that the response choices of 3, 4, and 5, generally aligning with neutral, agree, strongly agree, should not be tallied together to give percentages, and that each number should also have an associated written descriptors. And so for this reason, both of these changes were also incorporated into this year's survey data and the analysis for this year's data. And so in the handout that I shared last week Monday, you'll see that the same raw data set was used for December
August and again in November, using that same threshold of only looking at responses for 4s and 5s on the same rating scale. Another big topic that was shared was around parent perception, and that asked for us to revisit that this school year, which we will certainly plan to do. We did gather some data in February, and we were lucky to receive 550 responses. From that data, we have some percentages, around approximately 75% of parents have read information related to ruler units and SEL instruction from their child's principal or building communication, and that 65% of parents had read the homeschool partnership letters, with varying degrees of participation using that same homeschool partnership letter. In review of the volume of information going home through these venues, we felt like those percentages were positive. Additionally, just as I mentioned, we will plan to pursue additional survey data this year from parents. As a separate point of reference around parent input, we have currently approximately 15 students whose parents have requested for them to not participate in ruler lessons, which equates to less than 1% of our students in grades K through 5. There was also a concern raised around a video clip that was shared with a board member, raising concern that this video demonstrated perhaps a concerning or inappropriate relationship between a child and an adult with a disability. In reviewing that video, which I hope that you've received the link to, it shares the story of a boy whose mother, during her middle school years, developed a friendship with an individual with a disability, and that friendship extended beyond school and into adulthood for what he described as daily communication. This individual was invited to family dinners and to stay the night on occasion, as well as engage in activities such as hide and seek. The reason this video was selected as an optional resource for teachers is because it illuminates the concept and the emotion of feeling valued. The little boy talks about what value he sees in the man with a disability, how he sees and views how he sees the person with, excuse me. This video was selected because it exemplifies the emotion of value, and I believe has ties with our current links program. I'm so sorry. In which we hope for students to develop genuine relationships with students with disabilities, see the value in their differences, and if those friendships extend beyond school and into adulthood, we certainly want to celebrate them. Finally, I don't feel like I spent adequate time sharing the student growth measure. So that was on the other side of the 2-page handout. Student growth is certainly an important measure that I hope we can consider in terms of the effectiveness of teaching and learning around this. Again, this involved 1st and 4th grade students, and asked for them before and after a unit was taught. Questions that related to identifying a character's emotion in a scenario, to understand cause and effect relationships between an emotion and a precipitating event. It also asked students to identify how that particular emotion may impact one's thinking, feeling, and behavior, to identify regulation strategies, and to identify those strategies that have been taught through the ruler curriculum. I'm so sorry for my shaky voice. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have or give any additional feedback.
Thanks, Mandy. I know you and your team have spent an enormous amount of time, energy, pouring your heart into our kids, so thank you. I do appreciate that you've always been focused on what's best for our kids. Thank you for doing that. We do plan on collecting additional data for the Board of Education as we navigate the spring. The primary reason why we were originally asking for approval this evening was because if there was an alter in curriculum, we need time to evaluate, plan, and get ready for next school year. So I think that we'll see how that progresses. if this is the wishes of the board, that we progress and that do approve this curriculum at the end of this, near the end of the school year, then we, in our staff and under Mandy's leadership and in the work with all of our PBIS specialists, I know many of them are here tonight, and our building principals who pour their hearts into our kids every day, then we'll be ready to really continue to improve the work that we do next year, which we do with every curriculum area. I can tell you our orchestra kids are amazing behind us earlier tonight, but that doesn't mean that they always play the same song every year. They try to improve and make it harder for these kids. So that would be the plan in the spring, late spring moving forward. If that is not the wish of the board at that point, then we'll have to have some discussions on what that looks like moving forward for the fall. And we'll just have to have those conversations and figure out what the next steps are. So I do want to thank Mandy. I think our building principals know it. I think our staff know it. I hope our community understands how amazing you are. Thank you.
Questions or comments for Ms. Thomas from the board? We have all the information that you provided. I believe, check me on this, but will this information be on the district site as well?
Most of it is already.
Already, okay, okay.
Certainly add anything.
Okay. Other questions, comments from the board?
Just to clarify one thing you said, in the, I think the very first survey data, you referenced some teachers would have preferred to keep their previous materials instead of adopting Ruler. Can you talk a little bit about, like, prior to Ruler and SEL, how teachers addressed these needs that they identified in students?
Sure, I think that there was a variety of means that were used to address this. So different buildings sometimes had different themes around concepts around character traits or growth mindset or other attributes of social emotional learning. Some teachers had created their own materials, some had sort of inherited some from others, and so prior to this being set as a district goal, we had also provided PD to teachers around trauma-informed practices, as well as trying to build just common language around behavior and behavior responses. One of the pieces of feedback that we received from teachers at that time is that they asked for additional tools. And so to best support some of the training and delivery of those tools and also the techniques, we felt that looking at a means to provide district-wide common vocabulary and teaching and learning around this would be of benefit, which sort of kick-started the curriculum selection process.
Thank you. It's not helpful to hear, and to me, affirms the importance of having district-wide curriculum for the consistency of supporting the teachers with how they're going to, apply it in the classroom, the lessons that are available. I appreciate that, although we're not taking action this evening, I appreciate and agree with the statements and comments around continuing to study, continuing to learn, make the curriculum available, make it available to parents, find ways to solicit parental feedback, continue to solicit teacher feedback, and find ways to make sure that we can address any concerns that folks have, to make sure that we can bring clarity where there may be confusion, and at the same time make sure that we find a path forward to support all of our kids and our teachers, whether it's ruler curriculum or another curriculum, just making sure that we're continuing to address these needs in the classroom. I think there's clearly no doubt that there's benefit based on some of the personal stories that we've heard and based on some of the needs that we identify in our classroom. So appreciate your leadership in helping us to get better as a district for this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what's been interesting about this pilot is that it also immediately prompted program evaluation. And I would just want to express too that although this question and our conversations have been centered around curriculum adoption, that wouldn't stop the program evaluation component of that. And so we would be certain to follow the same cycles and routines that we do with all of our curriculum in terms of evaluating both effectiveness and fit. And so regardless of whether it was ruler or any other curriculum beyond the adoption process, we would certainly have a program evaluation process to to continue on.
Other questions, comments? Okay, again, we have it. No, okay.
So the board has heard from many parents over the past year regarding social emotional learning. Unfortunately, some of the parents who feel that it's an effective program and has really benefited their family have been intimidated from not speaking in public. I wish those parents felt comfortable enough to be present to give their input. Most of the emails have been received by the entire board, but yet I feel like we don't always hear the positive, specific comments about social emotional learning. And I had printed some of those out and had planned on reading specific excerpts, but because we are choosing to delay this vote until sometime later in the year, I didn't feel that that was fair to the people who had emailed. But as I read through these emails, I was astounded at the number of parents who not only had a specific reference to how it benefited their child, but how it benefited their family. How this was a diving board into discussions as a family at the dinner table or in the car. Their child learned a specific word, and they talked about when they were a young person and they had these emotions and how they dealt with it. There's one parent who talked about the fact that they were never taught how to deal with their emotions. Now that their child is in this program and is learning some of these things, how they have then become a better person. Because now they understand that if they had been taught at a young age how to deal with some of their emotions, some of the struggles they dealt with in life would probably not have happened. And so I just want to encourage everyone to look to your neighbor, ask thoughtful questions about the impact to family members, not just those that you associate with on a regular basis. Because again, as our board has signed every January, we have a code of conduct as a board to meet the needs of all children. And even though your child may not need this particular service, I think it's a disservice to the entire community if we don't allow something to proceed. And I'm not saying ruler is the answer, but I do firmly believe that some component of social emotional learning is not only beneficial, but it's necessary. We live in a very difficult world. One of the gentlemen talked about learning reality. Yes, part of a social emotional learning is learning about reality. Reality says, how do I have to deal with what's happening in our world? Some parents are equipped, some parents are not. Some parents have extended families, church families. There are people who don't. And if we can't be supportive of that in a public school in our community to assist children and family, then I have to question if this is the community I was raised in. Again, not saying that this particular curriculum is or is not, but we need to be understanding of the world we live in, not just our own bubble, and understand the impact social emotional issues have on children.
Other questions or comments? Other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for that update. And again, the board has information for review as well. We move on to report, SAT data discussion item.
So they are going to get the data set up here. While they're doing that, we have the privilege of sharing some celebratory data, academic data, again this evening. But first, I would like to provide a few comments just to give us a little bit of context as we, again, review some celebratory data. The mission of Hudsonville Public Schools is to educate, challenge, and inspire all learners to become contributing members of a global society. Hudsonville teachers and administrators have always gone above and beyond, even more so since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic on March 13th, 2020. Since the pandemic began, there is a narrative across the country that's been seeping into our community. The narrative questions whether educators are doing a good job educating their students and ensuring their academic growth. Hudsonville Public School teachers and administrators have received criticism for our efforts to ensure all students are seen, valued and heard, and create learning environments with optimal conditions for learning. A common thread of the criticisms is that we need to focus on reading, writing, and math only, or a return to academic excellence theme. The distractions have been real and even intense sometimes. However, our teachers and administrators have never wavered from their dedication and commitment to our students. Since Friday, March 13th, 2020, our teachers and administrators have researched, learned, and supported each other in countless ways. We have worked tirelessly to ensure the academic progress of each and every one of our students. We developed a virtual school in less than 6 months. Teachers and administrators came together to learn a common platform to distribute and allow access to teaching and learning during the pandemic. Teachers live streamed students into their classrooms on a daily basis to access teaching and learning. This was still occurring last year at this time. They delivered textbooks, care packages, and well wishes to students at their homes while family members or themselves were ill or in quarantine. Our technology department rolled out a one-to-one device initiative to ensure student access to teaching and learning that takes districts years to roll out in our area. We researched, developed, and implemented a first ever kindergarten through 9th grade after-school tutoring program and summer school with profound growth of our students noted. Finally, Dr. Vanderjagt advocated across the state and county to keep in-person learning a priority for our students. We had the maximum number of in-person instruction days allowed at Hudsonville Public Schools. Please know this is not an exhaustive list. The innovation, professionalism, and collaboration on behalf of all of our teachers and administrators to make this happen is amazing. I had the opportunity at the October board meeting, October 13th, to present data, and again here this evening. The data that I presented in October showed that our students are on track because of our teachers and administrators. I would be remiss to not acknowledge the emotional strain the last 2.5 years has been with this group of professionals. The reputation of academic excellence that HPS has always stood for still exists today. We are not off track. The data is clear. I hope that the evidence of academic performance is proof enough to move forward. The systems we have in place will continue to close gaps that might exist between students making academic progress and those still needing more time and support. I am confident our teachers and administrators will continue with daily grace, professionalism, and passion for all kids and a focus on learning. I hope you will celebrate the following data with us this evening. As you may remember, I presented both MSTEP and SAT data in October. I used 2 comparative groups to illustrate our students' academic performance and rebound from the COVID pandemic. The first comparable group, you'll notice, is on the left. This is considered like district data from across the state. This is comparable districts with like size as well as free and reduced percentages. The second comparable group I used in this data set compares to Hudsonville to all districts in Ottawa County, and those districts are noted on the right in blue. This evening, I'm highlighting once again our district's SAT scores within both comparable groups. This is the time of year after the release of the data in the fall that buildings and the district dives further in to look for trends, dig deeper into any noticings that they have, and certainly to celebrate with our teachers. The SAT scores shared in October show the blue line as Hudsonville clearly outperforming our peer districts across the state, as well as the yellow line at the very bottom, which are all LEAs and PSAs, which stands for our educational agencies. All of our learning educational agencies is LEAs, and PSAs are our private schools. On the next slide, this shows our Ottawa County peers. Again, the blue line is Hudsonville Public Schools. Again, outperforming Ottawa County schools and clearly the state. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Beal and Mr. Ski. They have further very exciting data to share with you about SAT.
Thanks. I know data is always like the most exciting thing that everybody always gets. If you're like me, you're really excited to look at data. So I just wanted to share a little bit more about what we have here. As a reminder, testing at Hudsonville High School, the PSAT 910 is what 9th graders and 10th graders are. We require them all to take it because it does give them a good baseline for what they're going to do, and it helps us as educators and our teachers to know how students are performing, what their growth areas might be, and then where we can improve as a district. So PSAT 910 data is not something that's state reported, so we have how we did, and we can sometimes get it for the entire county, but it's more about how can we look at individual students and how can they perform better over the years. The MME is the big test that all 11th graders take, that it consists of the SAT, it also is the ACT work keys, which is work skills, and the MSTEP. It's the only accountability measure that happens at the high school level. It's required by the state of Michigan, and it's also a Hudsonville Public Schools graduation requirement. It is required that 95% of our students participate in the test, otherwise we can lose state funding. And that was waived last year, or 2 years ago. It was not waived last year, and we had 99.29% of our juniors take that SAT test, which is remarkable when you consider all the different factors that go into attendance these days. And then we also have AP exams. So students can earn college credit. I'm sure you're all familiar with AP exams. So what I want to look at really quick, I could go into all the different subgroups of data, but primarily where are we now, and then Mr. Beal is going to talk about why are we here and what's next. The SAT total score, that's Hudsonville Public Schools, as Ms. Taylor talked about. We had 99.29% of students tested. And if you look at that over the years, I got to click on this right here, you'll see that we are doing very, very well when we consider our the Ottawa County peers that we mostly compare with, because the resources are similar. So we compare ourselves to Ottawa County because we'll all go through the OAISD, which is where we get a lot of the supports that all these similar districts use. When you look at pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, I think it's a testament to our teachers and the track that we are on. That top line, that top blue line, is the average score increase of SAT scores from 2021 to 2022. So that was from 2 years ago to last year. The bottom line is the average score that's the average score change from 2019, pre-pandemic, to 2022. We had a decrease of 1 point from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, which obviously we pride ourselves on our ability to prepare students and to teach them the Michigan Merit Curriculum, so we don't want to go down. But when you compare that to like peers, we are far outperforming everybody else. When we look at other districts in the county, we have not only, we've increased our SAT scores from 2 years ago to last year, and we're almost back to pre-pandemic levels. And I think that's a testament to our teachers and the work that they put in. We know that college and college readiness is not everything, so we also looked at tech center enrollments. Tech center enrollments are based upon enrollment, so we only have so many slots compared to how many students we have at the high school. Our current wait list is growing, and it's something that we and our counselors want to look into. So that's just data that you could have, so you can see how many kids are enrolled in tech center. And dual enrollments are kids that are also enrolled in college classes. So I'm going to turn over to Mr. Beal to talk about how do we get here.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor and Mr. Szymanski. I think some of what I'm going to say is going to be a little bit redundant, but Mr. Szymanski, specifically, thank you for organizing all the testing. I used to have to do that role as an assistant principal, and it is quite an arduous task. Around spring break, we have to get ready for that. It's a big job, so thank you specifically to Mr. Szymanski. The rationale, when we showed that data specifically to our teachers when it was recently released, and it's not to besmirch any of our neighbors, because we really appreciate and are friends with our neighboring districts in the county, but it's to be proud, and when we showed our teachers that data, they cheered, and we applauded with them and celebrated with them because we were very proud of that data piece. And a lot of that has to go to the hard work that was put in, as Mrs. Taylor mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, during what was probably the most difficult time that any of us has faced as educators, certainly. Difficult for our teachers and difficult for the students during that time. But anything worth doing is often difficult, and we made it through that to this point where it is important to us that we do reflect on that important work and really take pride in it. Specifically, I'm honored to be here to really, and that's why this picture of our staff is up there, but it's not just the high school staff that I have the privilege of working together, working with every single day and supporting, but it's a K-12 endeavor. The reason why our students had the resilience during that time was because of the wonderful administrators all the way down to the ECC and to really all of our district employees, so we're very proud of that. A couple things I want to point out on here. You heard me talk years ago about seminar and how we wanted to change that from what it was, used to be called advisory. It was a little bit different based on grade level. We changed it up, gave students the ability to transfer to get additional support. We really increased that by adding another day during the pandemic, giving students a chance to get additional help, and teachers to have that specific time twice a week now, and it still is, to work with students that maybe needed additional support. And also, as Mrs. Taylor pointed out, I wanted to mention the tutoring before and after school by our teachers, who oftentimes are working in additional to all of their expectations. So I want to point those two things out. When I was just a young teacher considering going into administration, one of the things that I was told by someone very dear to me and a mentor of mine was that there's really only two jobs in education. You're either a teacher or you support teachers. And I feel like that's the kind of the theme of what we're sharing with you tonight, and that goes from all of you and Dr. Vanderjack to myself, the building principals, support staff, our awesome food service department, everyone, either teach or support those that do. So we're very proud of that hard work that we did throughout this time. Again, like Mrs. Taylor said, distributing laptops, going one-to-one and fast-forwarding that process, it was just something that was being talked about before the necessity kicked in to really push fast forward on that. And again, those maximum number of in-person days, but also implementation and support of new initiatives that supported our students specifically. And of course, what it's all about, lastly, but certainly not least, we have the best students that are showing resilience, caring for each other, putting in the work during that difficult time and making it through, and us getting to celebrate with them along the way. I think one of the reasons why we liked putting this photo in was when we first got to see students get together again after not being allowed to do so, we got emotional about it, because even though we love to support our teachers and the curriculum and the core content, really it's about the experience of what it means to be a Hudsonville High School student. And that's what I'm so proud to get to do at a place that meant so much to me as a student. As all of you know, I graduated from here, and so it's very meaningful to me that we got to do this hard work and make it through a very difficult time. So I'm incredibly proud of all of the district staff, and specifically, of course, the high school staff that I'm grateful enough to get to serve. So what does that mean for where we're going forward? Yes, while we want to celebrate this data, and again, we applauded with our staff at our last staff meeting, this does not mean that we are going to be complacent. It doesn't matter what gets thrown at us from outside sources, because we know what we do every day. And we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep doing it really well, and celebrate that with you all. Thank you very much.
I do want to thank not only the work that you do, your staff, and all those around you. I just want to ask clarification, Mr. Szymanski. Is it fair to say that of all the districts in Ottawa County, our recovery from the SAT prior to COVID till now is the highest of any school in the county.
Yeah, and in fact, I did the similar districts too, like Ms. Taylor talked about, and no one really is even close to us. The average district actually is still about 23 points below where they were pre-pandemic on the average SAT score, and we're back to our pre-pandemic levels, which, like everyone has mentioned before, is really a testament to our teachers and students and all the way on down. So,
thank you.
Comments from the board? Questions? Just look like you're
I'll just say a huge thank you. Talk about impressive data. I mean, we have so much to be proud of, and I hope the teachers truly do celebrate this data. It's remarkable. And it's not just about the data, it's what the data means for our kids and how it's preparing our kids for whatever journey they want to follow, whether that's college, whether that's trade school, wherever they want to go. Just kudos and thank you for doing a tremendous job of getting our kids where they need to be.
Other questions, comments? Okay, awesome presentation, awesome data. This district is not off track. Sure, we had a dip in student enrollment this past year. We don't understand why that is. It may go up again next year. But at the end of the day, what sustains us is academic performance and the supports that enable academic performance. And that's what this team has done. And it's a team that never rests on its laurels. We never stop, because while we don't want to besmirch our neighbors, I agree with you, Mr. Beal, but make no mistake about it, we're in competition with our neighbors because of the way school funding is structured. The more students you get in, the more money you get, right? We may not like that, but that's the reality. And so at the end of the day, what parents care about are their academic excellence within the school, and is my child supported within the school? And this data supports that. The financial data that we reviewed, again, a few weeks ago, the district financially is in great shape. Excellent, excellent. Exciting to see where we're going to go from here. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We move on from that to Superintendent Report.
I just have three things. Number one, barring a review from the fire marshal, I'm looking directly at our students. The tunnel between the freshman campus and the high school will open up Monday. It's not a tunnel, the hallway between the two buildings, sorry about that. We do have one more review tomorrow morning, so if it's delayed, it's okay, it's very close. But we're optimistic. I do want to thank the work that Mr. Beal and his team has done to really communicate that, not only with our students, but to get excited. The wall came down a couple weeks ago. We're pretty confident the fire doors will open. They just have to make sure they close if there is a fire. So we're looking forward to that. So Monday, I think after first hour, the plan is cut the tape, stay indoors, let it snow, you're safe and you're warm. That's the key. So looking forward to that. My last two items I'm going to combine together, if that's okay. I do want to say a few words about Mr. Tuttle, Mr. Kapenga. Two gentlemen that have done everything they can to put students first. And it is appreciated, not just by me, because I have the microphone, but by our staff, by our leadership team, by our community. You have been through multiple iterations of strategic plans, and you have followed those based on board wishes. You have opened buildings from the freshman campus when it opened, Jamestown Lower. I think, Larry, you were involved in South being moved multiple times from the building moving around. Additions at Allred. You have been instrumental in the design and the work of our current $140 million bond project between the field house, the high school additions, between the freshman campus, the choir room, the work at the 5-6 building, the work that now will begin at Park, at Bauer, the Forest Grove parking lot. I mean, the list goes on and on for the work that you've been involved in. You have been involved in various millage passes, passing of villages and bond campaigns, sinking funds, Those are things that sometimes go unnoticed, but the work that you do and the conversations and the questioning of, are we being really good stewards of the money of our community, has been very helpful for our entire district. And particularly, I will say, selfishly, has helped me grow. Larry, 15 and a half years on the board. You did come in July, which was a unique year. So we'll call it 15 and a half. I know Tom's still here. But 36 years in the classroom. You add those up. And that was before I was born. But I was really impressed that you've been serving our community, really our community, with passion and pride. And that is appreciated. Chad, you're 6 years on the board. It's been my entire tenure here. And it has been nothing but a pleasure to work alongside you. You are a true gentleman of class. You are not always, I'm just going to say agreeable on everything, but you have a very professional way of saying, can we talk more about this? And truly have the student's best interest in mind. Larry, you've graduated over 8,000 kids. And that's a lot. And many of them probably were family members. Or definitely ones. And I know you didn't graduate, Tom. Maybe you did. I don't know. But I know granddaughter was one of the last to come through when she graduated a couple years ago. You got one in kindergarten, so you can come back, I guess. And Chad, if you think about the last 6 years, over 3,000 kids. That truly, you held the bar high, you both did, to make sure that our students, we have a high expectation, but there's a high reward for the standards that both of you have set on behalf of the board. Larry, you've been through a few superintendents on the board. You've also been through several, probably, as a teacher, and definitely as from a union standpoint. And I appreciate you being as gentle to me as probably with any of them. So thank you for not only the transition, but committing yourself to that transition into multiple different leaders that we've had in the district. Chad, you all have known, and I hope you can compare the two that you have and say that you've really held them to the fire to make sure that they've done their job, as you would expect anybody in this role to do. So thank you to both of you for that. Just last, I would like to reiterate that your commitment to our kids in our community will never be forgotten. It is time for transition, and we look forward to what that will bring. But please know that what you have done for this district, what you've done for our kids, you are truly Eagles forever, and we thank you. I do have a small token of appreciation, a couple things. Chad, in all honesty, and you already know this, but I did not get you flowers, but I did get your wife flowers, because her time also dealing with a lot of these conversations that sometimes they do have to come home. And so I have a small token for Lindsay. Thank you for being here tonight. Larry, I got you a poinsettia because I thought Tom could take it home and give it to you for Christmas. Full transparency. I got you both just a small token, some apparel also. And then we do have what we consider call a platinum card. And there are 3 people that now will have access to a platinum card. You two, Steve Bauerman also will receive one. And it's a lifetime pass to get into any event, whether it's a fine arts event, a sporting event. We certainly want to welcome you back into any environment you want to come back in on this site. So thank you very much for everything you both have done. Either if you want to say anything, and I'll ask Larry if you want to first. It's your last chance.
Well, it's been 52 years. I started student teaching at Bauer Elementary. And remember that time, I thanked the Lord so many times for how blessed I've been. especially in my teaching career. You can't please all the people all the time, but I can't tell you how many former parents and students who come up to me and give me a hug, which warms my heart. And I'm just grateful. And I'm going to continue to work at South Elementary as a Kids Hope mentor for 45 minutes a week, because kids are still extremely important. And I thank all of you for your applause.
We'll hand it down to Chad, and then, my arms aren't quite that long. And then we're going to forego central office and principal roundtable. Lots going on. I know you're all disappointed by that. We'll hand it down to Chad, and then do a quick board roundtable, and then we'll call it a night.
Thanks, Doug. I do have a few comments. You give me a microphone and then use it. And I just want to start with just thank you. It's truly been a privilege and an honor to serve. I feel like I've received more than I've been able to give. Just to get a front row seat to what goes on in the district and to see the compassion and the passion for our kids that is universal across everybody involved in the school district, whether it's the administrative team, whether it's the teachers, the staff, the parents, the volunteers, and the students themselves. The data was awesome to see tonight. We have an amazing district here, and we have a lot of great stuff going on. Grateful to everybody who supported me to be able to be successful in this board role. I know Mr. Briggs, I probably asked you a million finance questions, and you were always ready with an answer, and it was truly a pleasure.
Thanks for asking.
You know, looking back over the past 6 years, it's been quite a 6 years. I think we all recognize a lot has changed over the past 6 years. There's a lot of decisions that we had to make. We probably didn't get them all right, but I got to say what the continual focus was for everybody all the time is how do we make it better? You know, I graduated from Hudsonville in 1995, and I got an outstanding education from this district. When I got on the board, my kids were in first grade and fourth grade, which means tonight they're in seventh grade and 10th grade. 6 years, and I got to tell you, they're getting a better education than I did. They've got access to more classes, better curriculum, more extracurricular activities than we have ever had in this district. And I think we've got to recognize that extra in extracurricular is only made possible because there's people willing to give extra time and energy to make that possible, whether that's coaching or leading a club or a program before school, after school. And we're just blessed with such amazing teachers and staff who just make that all possible. And I hope that we can continue that and do everything possible to just make it even better and better. You know, I recognize that over the past few years, as we went through the pandemic, we've received a lot of additional engagement. I think that's great. I think that there's also been some frustration and some anger out there and confusion. And I think it's great to have the engagement. I think one of the things that we slid backwards on was the ability to disagree without being disagreeable. And I hope that we can put some intentional focus as a community on fixing that and not to shy away from the tough conversations. I think we have to be willing to have those tough conversations. And I think we have to be able to be clear about what the issues are. And I always say with my team at work, to be clear is to be kind. But it's equally important to be kind while you're being clear and to make sure that while we address the issues, we can be respectful with each other. I gotta say, being here at the board meetings, one of my, the most enjoyable things has always been having the students here and hearing from the students, whether it's the recognition activity or whether it's hearing the students who have come to share their voice on various issues. They've always been incredibly eloquent. I've loved to see the engagement. I love to see students here tonight. I just encourage the students to get engaged and to be involved and to make sure that their voice is heard in this process too. to the new board members who are coming in, please know that I'm praying for you already. And I will be praying for you on an ongoing basis and all of the board that you will continue to have the wisdom to continue to make it better in this district. It's an incredibly fulfilling job, and at the same time, it's not without challenges. I will warn you, I think the first graduation I was at, I got invited, Chad, do you want to hand out the diplomas to the students? And I thought, what an amazing honor. Larry was up there with me, and I think we handed out 444 diplomas out at Hope College that night. And I'll just give you a couple tips. One, hand sanitizer. Lots and lots of hand sanitizer. There was some really sweaty palms. And the second thing, you know, Larry, when we got done, you showed me your hand. And I think by the end of that, every blood vessel in his hand was broke. Because as these kids came through, some of them squeezed your hand so tight, they were so excited to get their diploma. So as I look back, that might have been the board hazing experience. So just forewarning that if they offer to let you hand out the diplomas, be prepared. You're going to get some strong handshakes, some sweaty palms. Encourage you to use a lot of hand sanitizer in that process. But it's been incredibly fulfilling to get into schools, to see firsthand the work that the teachers are doing, to be able to interact with the students. We have an amazing district, and I hope that above all, we can all stay focused on just making it better, whatever we do. Better curriculum, better for the teachers, better extracurricular activities, and just focus on making it better, because everything we are today, I think we can see by the data, we're a better district today than we were a year ago, than we were 5 years ago, than we were 10 years ago, and even back in 1995 when I graduated. So with that, I'll give up the microphone and just say, you know, thank you, Dr. Vanderjack, for your leadership, your support, and for all that you've done for this district. It's been incredible to work with you as well as the board. Thank you.
Board roundtable, then we will adjourn. Go ahead.
I just want to say thanks to Larry and Chad. It's been a short time since I've been on the board. We haven't overlapped too much, but I've definitely learned a lot in the short time I've been here, so thank you for your leadership here. Thank you to the administration. Thank you, Mandy, for your presentation, and for Jordan and Joe for everything you've done, and really shedding light on the district that I also been a part of for all my life. And I think it's a good time to be in this position, and it's really great to see all the progress that we continue to make, and I appreciate that. Thank you for everything.
I realize I better say one more thank you, I'm going to hear about it when I get home. And that truly is to my wife, Lindsay, and my kids. It's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours that they have sacrificed to allow me the ability to do this. So thank you for allowing me to serve on the board and for all your support.
Exactly.
And I'll just jump in real quick. And I mean, Tom, you know, Tom is here, again, I spoke earlier for Larry, but you're also, you know, committed to enabling him to be on the board as well. And just like Lindsay is for Chad, so we appreciate that, your commitment to Larry to be here. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, the passion that I heard tonight from the administration, I think it does go unnoticed in the midst of all of the noise, and you cannot refute the data. So I just want to thank you for giving a passionate voice tonight to the data and the work that you guys have been doing. And Larry, you've been on, you've been on as long as I've been here. I loved your perspective coming from a teacher. You had a lot of valuable input. You have some good dry humor we got to enjoy along the way. But truly thank you for the time that you spent. And don't be a stranger. Show up. We'll maybe give you a coffee or something.
I'll probably be on the list every day.
Okay, each month. That sounds good. That's good. Boy, and Chad, I truly am going to miss you. During COVID, you were like my ballast. Having someone who has knowledge about what's happening with COVID on the ground, it was so reassuring to talk to you. And I have to say, that had an impact on me. So I greatly appreciate that, in addition to your position on the board. Your skill set is going to be missed. I'm not even sure we fully recognize what you brought to the board. So thank you for what you've given. I will greatly miss you, as most times we sat next to each other and had fun conversations about our families and vacations, and appreciate everything you brought to us. And also just want to say happy holidays to all of you. I hope you can bring joy to your little corner of the world. And as we remember the humility that Jesus brought to this earth, hopefully we can all emulate that going forward. And Merry Christmas.
So many words have been said already about Chad and Larry, and I mean, everything that has been said, I would repeat and echo. I will just say that I will miss you both dearly. I consider you friends, I consider you colleagues, I appreciate your wisdom, your insights, again, all that's been said. And I know both of you well enough as well, but I know you're not going far. And I know you'll be involved in the district, and I'm looking at Lindsay and Tom, and I know you'll make sure they're involved in the district, and which we appreciate, and we look forward to further activity with you. But those would be my words. I will wish you so dearly as friends and as colleagues. And I've had the benefit, I'm going to pick up on a point that both Chad and Dawn made. I've had the benefit of having students. My youngest is a senior this year. And so I've had students in this district for 28 years or something, I don't know, long time. And the trend is, there are so much more in this district now than there was when my kids started. And it's only gotten better, and it continues to be better. And partly because of the involvement of Chad and Larry. So we're in a great place, and we're partly in a great place because of you.
I would agree with what Ken has said. It's been an honor to work with both Chad and Larry. And Larry, I think I've sat next to you the entire 4 years that I've been on the board, and it was always nice to talk to you about Northville and the horse racing. So I will miss you. I will miss you both. And it was great to see all the data tonight. And Hudsonville is a wonderful, wonderful district.
Amen. Thanks, Tom, for those words. I'm glad they're recorded, because I never would have believed I would have heard anything like that.
Chad, thank you for your service. I wish you well going forward in the future. Larry, it's been a delight to serve with you. I'll miss your corny teacher jokes. It's been good to have you here. And thanks for the excellent academic information tonight about our students. And it only confirms what the young man told me down in Byron Center this morning at about 6 o'clock. That it's a great district doing great work. So thanks again for your work.
Okay, with that, can I have a motion, please, to adjourn? In a second.
Support.
Motion by Larry Kapenga, support from Chad Tuttle. All in favor say yes. Yes. We are adjourned. Merry Christmas, and have a happy holiday season, everyone. Thank you for being here.